The advice and opinions expressed by the host of Autism Live and her guests are meant solely as suggestion and should not be in any way construed as child-specific advice. The Center for Autism and Related Disorders advises working with a board-certified behavior analyst who has experience with autism before starting any intensive behavioral intervention. Any choices you make in determining your child's treatment are completely at your own discretion.
Good morning and welcome to Autism Live. I'm Shannon Penrod. We're coming to you live from the Warner Center in Woodland Hills, California. This is the home of Autism Live. It is also the home for the Center for Autism and Related Disorders. We are located in Woodland Hills, California, and if you've been watching the news, you know that a large portion of the area around us is struggling with fires. I myself was having some issues, fire-related issues yesterday, but we got through it, sailed through it gloriously, and we just want all of our thoughts and prayers to be with everyone who is in the path of the fire today. Please stay safe and don't take any chances, because these fires with the winds that we've been having, they're very fast-moving and it can be very catastrophic. But we are here this morning and we're going to be with you for the next 2 hours. Most of it is going to be live, although I'm going to give you a heads up that normally we have Dr. Doreen Grant-Bichet live during this time, but she's not able to be with us here today. So we're going to play an oldie but a goodie. And this is just from earlier this summer when I was out on the road with my kiddo. I think, if I'm not mistaken, I might have been in Corpus Christi on the day that this happened. And so Nancy Alspaugh Jackson filled in for me, and it was a particularly great show. I love watching when I'm not on and I'm like, dang, this is really good. These are good questions. I love that. So in any case, so that's going to be in just a few minutes, and then we'll be back live for the second hour for Let's Talk Autism with Shannon and Nancy. Nancy Alspaugh Jackson is here. She's going to join me, and we've got a very special guest. Vince Redmond is going to be with us. He's a licensed marriage and family therapist. He's a regular here on the show, and we consult him about a variety of different things. And guess what we're going to talk about today? Anxiety, which if you're not feeling anxiety right now at this time of the year with all the things that are going on, goodness knows you're doing something incredible. I don't know what that is. I hope it's not medicating yourself, because I think most of the rest of us are having anxiety about one thing or another. It could be about holidays. It could be about the weather. It could be about the state of the world. There's enough to be anxious about right now, right? And our kiddos are like little magnets, and they pick that up. So we're going to talk with Vince about, there's a new study out that we're going to talk about in the news. We're going to talk about that and talk with Vince about what can we actually do, because we see that there are bigger repercussions potentially if we let it go in our kiddos. We don't want to do that. There are things that we can do to help. So Vince is going to help us to crack the code on that. And as I said, we got a bunch of in the news. And at some point, I'm hoping, if we don't get to it today, we'll definitely tomorrow. We had a lovely event on Saturday. And I want to take a second to thank everybody involved. It was wonderful, wonderful, sensitive Santa. Really want to thank Dina Kimmel and everybody over at We Rock the Spectrum. Not We Walk, We Rock the Spectrum. I know Dina is on her way to Dubai right now because there's one opening in Dubai. But Dina and her crew really came through for us and helped us so much with the event. And we saw so many wonderful families and their kids, and it was just such a great day. Samantha has put together a really lovely video that we'll show a little bit later on, so that you guys can see some of the wonderful faces from the event, because it was really, really amazing. And of course, CARD came through, and we had a core of therapists that were there and on the ground and helping with the families, and it was just a love fest. And we'll show you some pictures from it, but it was really, really incredible. And of course, we have to thank all of the toy companies that donated so many fabulous toys. We're featuring them here on our show, and you can also get an idea about what kind of toys and who gave toys in our toy guide, the Autism Live toy and gift guide for 2017, which all you have to do is go to autism-live.com and click on the blog, and it's right there. Speaking of which, I forgot to tell you all the different ways you can get in touch with us. So Samantha's going to show you some of those ways, but they're, all different ways you can get in touch with us. But remember, homepage, autism-live.com, and the blog is in the upper left-hand corner. Just click on it, it'll take you there. But also, excuse me, on that home site, if you click on the triangle that's on the computer screen, you could be watching the live show or the most recently recorded live show. To the side of all that is something we call the live feature. That's where you just put your cursor, you type, you hit enter, and it shows up here on my screen so you and I can have a conversation, or better yet, you can have a conversation with our experts here on the show. Now, this morning, the questions have all been received and answered because we're showing you a recorded one. But you know what? If you have questions, send them in because I banked them for next week, okay? So without further ado, because I don't want to waste any more time, take a look. Here's Ask Dr. Doreen from this summer.
And here we are with Doreen Graham-Pichet. Hi, Doreen. How are you?
I'm good, thanks, Nancy.
Good to be with you this morning.
Thank you. Very good to be here again.
Okay. And we want to remind people that this is not, they need to talk with their own clinicians.
Sure, absolutely. Welcome, everybody. It's nice to be back. And this is our usual disclaimer, I guess, at the beginning of the show where, I'm very happy to answer questions today. And we have received a whole bunch of questions, as I see in front of Nancy. But the main thing for everyone to know is that I'm going to try my best to answer your questions, but there's no real way that we can give you child-specific advice, because obviously I would need a lot more time with each individual, and I would need to get to know the children or the people that you're writing about, and that's impossible in this sort of show. So please, when you listen to my advice, make sure that you also, if you have professionals involved, it would be, I will always recommend that you access the people around you first and try to get professionals who can actually see your child and give you face-to-face individualized advice. Otherwise, a lot of my advice is really just to guide you and to give you direction, and hopefully that will help.
Okay. We're going to start with two questions from DJ Phillips at Unlocking the Key to Autism.
Sure. Hi, DJ.
Okay. Yeah. Hi, DJ. His first question is, what do you think about fidget spinners with autistic children, which is big these days?
Right. Good job, DJ, for thinking about that. I was thinking about that myself the other day when I saw these. In fact, we actually have, it's not just fidget spinners, but it's anything that can actually sort of is what we would in the old days classify as a self-stimulatory type of toy, I guess. And these are toys that allow the child to self-stimulate. And so if a child with autism likes to look at like fidget spinners, they'll be doing this continuously. And when you're doing this all the time, I guess you're not really focused on anything outside of doing that. And to some extent, as it's funny, Nancy, because you see our own kids these days and they're on their phones, right? And they're like constantly doing this sort of stuff, and they're not 100% focused on you, because sometimes you have to call them a couple of times, to get their attention. But ultimately, most of our kids they're not completely blocking out the environment. They learn to multitask. And what happens with children on the spectrum is that they don't learn to multitask, but when they're engaged with something self-stimulatory like this, they're completely blocking out the whole environment. And that is something we've always kind of not really promoted, because it reduces your ability to learn. So if you're doing this continuously, you're not really learning by observing or looking at other people and so on. So that's the bad side of it. On the positive side, sometimes we all need to, I guess, get away from whatever it is in our environment for one reason or another. Sometimes people are like very, let's say, agitated, or some of our kids might be anxious or worried or hyper-stimulated. Let's say something is causing massive stimulation for them. Then, it's not such a bad idea to go to something like a fidget spinner, because it'll take you out of whatever is causing you anxiety, whatever is causing you rage, perhaps, or whatever, and it'll calm you down. It'll bring you back to your center in some ways. So that's sort of the positive side of it. So like anything else, I think that if you have, personally, I feel that if it is used in limitation, so if a fidget spinner is used for two purposes, one purpose being kind of to take a break, to calm yourself, let's say, to get away from something in your environment that's disturbing you at short intervals, that's okay. And then also it's okay to me if it's used for the purposes of reinforcement. Like a lot of kids just love these, so you can easily give that, let the child do it a couple times and take it away. And that is a reinforcing type of thing. It's like giving a small game. And so it's perfectly fine as long as it doesn't become obsessive in nature.
Yes, because couldn't this become its own stem that
Exactly,
the child starts to really crave it? And
Exactly. And like
wanna
anything
stop.
else that is self-stimulatory, like the toys, let's say, that have music or sound or whatever, and if a child is sitting there doing it all day long, that's no good.
Right.
As long as you control it and limit it and make sure that it's at short intervals, then I think it's fine.
Okay. DJ's second question is, how do you get a 3-year-old severely autistic child to take medication when all he will drink is milk? His mother has even tried using rewards to try to get him to take the medication. He won't take it.
So that's a great question, DJ. There's a whole program, and I don't know the medication that we're talking about, if it's in pill form or what. I assume it is. But we do a whole program for pill swallowing. And it's a shaping process where it starts with what are these things called that you use on cakes? They're like speckles.
The sprinkles.
Sprinkles,
Yeah.
right? So like it starts with actually putting one sprinkle on the child's tongue, and then having them drink a little bit of milk, and then that will that you gradually, very gradually. So you have a container like this, and then the first one is sprinkles, and then the last one is the capsule or pill, and everything in between is gradients of larger and larger. So we have a lot of different things, and you actually get to, and these are, the reason we do it is because we have placebo pills of different sizes and placebo tablets of different sizes that are filled with just, a product that is neutral and doesn't hurt harm the child. But you start with these and you very gradually teach the child to swallow. And sometimes, at some phase you get stuck for a little bit because it's now the size where the child can actually feel it. But after a while, and the process we've timed it, it's about 70 hours or 60 hours, 60, 70 hours. Some kids go really fast.
Right.
Others take a little bit longer. But it is important at one point or another for children to learn how to swallow pills because, my God, some of our kids are on 75 supplements a day. So
Right.
I remember we developed this program years ago when a parent wrote to me and said it literally takes us an hour and a half every morning just to give her supplements. And I was like, that's ridiculous. We don't teach, because the parent was like mashing everything or
Right.
putting it in for whatever. And I was like, no, we can teach swallowing.
Right.
So that's really the thing to do. And otherwise, I mean, I hope that answers the question, because that should do it. But my concern is more a child who doesn't drink anything but milk.
Yes.
Because, and I don't know what kind of milk it is. Hopefully it's not cow milk,
Right.
because most of our kids react negatively to cow milk, but they do pretty well with other types of milk.
Yeah.
So that would be fine. And coconut milk, for instance, would be fantastic for the child.
Right. Interesting. I thought that Wyatt would not be able to take pills, and I just assumed he wasn't able to take pills.
And then he just did it.
Brought him in here and to work with Dr. Art,
And
he gave him the first size pill.
This
and
exact
he just
program.
took it right
you saw-
away.
Yeah, pill
Right.
program.
So I had assumed he wouldn't take them, and when in fact he took them quite readily.
Right
and-
away.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
So you never
interesting.
know. Sometimes
You
with our
don't
kids,
know. Sometimes they might change. So.
Absolutely.
Okay, we have a question here. My son is 7. He is potty trained for urination, but not for bowel movements.
Okay.
He is nonverbal, and we trained him for urination by having him sit on the toilet until he urinated and gave him toys that were saved just for urinating. Training for bowel movements has been so difficult because I can't predict when he's going to go. He goes once a day and the time varies. I can't give him his toy for going because I don't want to push when he doesn't need to go. I would appreciate any advice. Thank you. I love your show.
Well, thank you. That's very nice. Bowel movements are a little bit harder, but very hard if you don't know when it's going to happen. start by doing this. Start by tracking when it happens every day in a diary, because even though it might happen at different times, but there might also be something that does actually correspond. Like, for instance, it always happens 1 hour after eating or something like that. Try to write it down. And, you know, worst case scenario is that if it happens on some days at 9 a.m. and other days at 6 p.m., you know, that's a huge variation of time. If that does happen, then the second thing you can do is try to see if there's any particular environmental cues. Like, some of our kids become very private when they're about to have a bowel movement. Like, they'll go to another room. A lot of kids will go and hide in a closet. Sometimes with a child, you can actually see it in their facial or body because they tense up because they're trying to control it. See if you find any kind of antecedent that gives you a sign, because that obviously helps. If you don't have a time frame and you don't have an antecedent, then you're just going to have to basically do the same thing you did with urination, which is, you know, have him on the toilet all day with breaks of getting up, obviously. See, when we do urination training, and I don't know what process you did, when we do toilet training, we use this process that was developed by Fox and Azrin. And basically the process is a 2-day period where the child spends the vast majority of their time on the toilet, but with a lot of breaks. So, like, you start out on the toilet, the whole bathroom is decorated, everything is there, TV, whatever. So you're pretty much living in the bathroom those 2 days. But the child gets progressively longer and longer breaks when they get off the bathroom, if they've had a success. If they haven't, then the break period is very short and the child runs around with no underwear on. That's one of the things we published on this, actually, that children tend to have accidents when you put a diaper or underwear on. When there isn't anything on, they're more likely to hold it until they get back to the toilets, which is kind of interesting. So I would recommend that you do the same procedure, and please look up Fox and Azrin toilet procedure. But what you're doing is making sure in between you are not putting a diaper or pull-ups or underwear, anything on. And you're obviously keeping an eye on the child, and you're keeping the child very close to the toilet, so that you know, as soon as it starts to happen, you pop the child on the toilet and then heavily reinforce, as you did. You did the right thing, by the way, in terms of saving some reinforcers just for the process of toilet training. So that's a very, very good thing, and that's what you'll have to do again. You know, in the old days when we didn't know, this is before we knew how much gastrointestinal issues are involved with kids. Like, we're talking in the 70s and 80s. What we used to do is we literally used to give the child stool softeners, so that or laxatives even, so that they would have a day where they are going very frequently. Because so many of our kids had constipation issues in the 80s. But, you know, now we know better. Now we know that a lot of our children have issues with their gastrointestinal processing, so we don't do that obviously anymore, although half of our kids are still on some form of laxative. So, which makes it very difficult.
All right, we're going to take a brief break and we'll be back with more questions.
Great,
so stay with us.
Thank you.
Hi guys, welcome back. For the month of July, I figured we're going to do something again that's more for outdoorsiness, since it's summertime and I know your kids are going to be home and you need some activities to do inside and outside. So for July, I figured we'd make a lantern. So let's get started. The materials you'll be needing are wax paper, an iron, crayons, scissors, popsicle sticks, pencil sharpener, a glue gun, and tape. What I did first is that I have my iron heating on medium heat, okay? Make sure you keep this far away from your child because I won't want them to get hurt. Next thing I want to do is I'm going to take my wax paper and I'm going to make 4 sheets. I'm going to cut out a thing that's about 12 inches long, okay? Now that I have my wax papers cut out, what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab my crayons, and if you have kids around, which I hope you do, I'm going to grab them and have them make some crayon shavings. What the shavings are going to end up doing is making it a design. And again, this is another time for you and your child to talk about colors. You can discuss like what would happen if you mix, you know, some blue crayons and some yellow crayons. What would that produce? When you and your child have finally decided there's enough crayon shavings on your wax paper, what you're going to do next is you're going to take it and fold it in half. Now that I have it folded in half, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take an old newspaper and then I'm going to sandwich it in between. And then with my iron on medium heat, I'm just going to have it gently on there just so the wax melts into the paper and becomes one thing. Let's take a peek inside. As you can see, all the crayons have melted into it, making this beautiful kind of like rainbow-ish color. All right, now I'm going to do this with the other 3 that I've made, and then we're going to assemble our beautiful lantern. All right? So here are my 4 finished panels that I'm ready to build into the lantern. So what I'm going to do is I have these popsicle sticks, and I'm going to build them into a square and glue them together with my hot glue gun. While you're building your lantern, it's a good opportunity to work on math skills with your child. You could discuss how many sides does a square have versus how many sides does a cube have. Okay, I'm going to do this another 3 more times, so I have one for every single side. All right, well, now that I have these 4 different sides built, I am now going to take these wax paper things that I've built, and then I'm going to put glue on here and smash it on there, okay? I know the wax paper is way too big for it, but what we're going to do later is trim it. All right, so now they're all done being glued together. Now I'm going to take my scissors and trim along the outside. Now that the 4 sides are done, I'm going to take some tape and I'm going to line the edge of it so they will stay together to make my cube form. And voila, here's my lantern, but it's missing something. You're right, it's missing a light to illuminate it. So what I'm going to put in here is an LED light. I'm definitely not going to put a real candle or else this thing's going to catch on fire, and that is a real safety hazard, okay? So here's my little guy, and I'm going to turn it on and let's see what happens. Ooh, look at that. Isn't that pretty nice? And it's not even dark yet. I would love if you shared your pictures of your finished crafts. But until then, craft on. Bye, guys.
Can you see me flying by your side?
And we are back with Ask Dr. Doreen, where you get to ask your questions of Dr. Doreen Granpeesheh. Doreen, we had something that's come in from a parent. What can I do to stop my 2-year-old on the spectrum from hitting? He does it when he's upset.
Yeah.
Thanks. It's a big problem with a lot of families.
Very much so, and it's always. I mean, I'll repeat this entire lecture on how to identify functional behavior because I think it's so important. So when we get upset, you have to ask yourself why the child is getting upset, and there's a whole bunch of different reasons, and it's incredibly important to identify the reason. Because without really identifying the reason, what you do could be wrong. So let's say there are basically a set number of functions being reasons. So for instance, I might get upset, and also let's define what getting upset is actually. So let's assume this child is she naming any particular behavior?
Just hitting when he gets
Hitting.
upset.
Okay, so he hits. So let's say he hits
Right.
and he's upset because he wants an object that he can't have, or he wants something that he can't have. So that's called a tangible function. That means there's a tangible item out there that he wants to gain access to, and he can't have it. So he's throwing a fit and hitting you. Okay, so that's one function. If that is the case, when it's a tangible function, you have to make sure that the child doesn't get that item when they hit, but they do get the item when they ask appropriately. That's the way to deal with it. So basically what you're doing is you're teaching the child that hitting is not an effective way of communicating. Now let's say the function of the hitting is escape.
Right.
That means the child is hitting because they want to get out of something. So like the environment they're in, for instance. So you will go and say, oh, we're in a classroom. That's a great example, because a lot of times in classrooms, kids will throw a tantrum and hit the teacher because they know that the teacher is going to take them out, right? And that's actually what they wanted. They want to get out. So when it's an escape function, you make sure the child doesn't escape when they hit, but does get to escape when they ask. So the child could ask for a break, and then they get to go out. Otherwise, they have to stay there.
Okay.
So that's the other thing. Another one is demand function. So I will place a demand on you and you're trying to avoid the demand and you want to get out of the demand. So and so what you do is you make sure that when you place a demand on the child, you model them through so they actually do this instead of trying to escape it. You guys, when you identify the function, it becomes very clear how to deal with the behavior. But saying he gets upset, you can't do anything about it because you don't know what he's trying to communicate. Always remember that hitting or any of the behaviors, challenging behaviors, are communication. They're like language. Think of them as language. When you see your child doing something, think of it as, if he could talk, what would he be saying? If he could talk, what would he be saying? Always go to that immediately. He's hitting, he's screaming, whatever it is. If he could talk, what would he be saying? And if he's saying, I want out of here, he could be saying, I don't want to do this. He could be saying, I want that food, that item, that whatever. He could be saying, I'm too tired, whatever it is. Like, whatever it is, make sure that he doesn't get that because he hit. Teach him a better way to ask for that thing that he wants. So if he's tired, teach him to ask for breaks.
Right.
If he wants an object, teach him how to ask for objects or point to objects. If he, wants out, teach him how to ask for time out or to go out or whatever it is. It doesn't even have to be verbal, but it has to be appropriate. And that's where it comes to when we say you teach an appropriate way for the child to communicate so that they don't turn to this inappropriate way of communicating. Mm-hmm. That's really all it is. All of our children's challenging behaviors are ways to communicate. Mm-hmm. And if they had a better way to communicate, they would use it. Now, it's interesting because when you look at a mom taught me this many years ago, but when you look at what happens when we have a baby, right? When you have a baby, the baby doesn't know how to communicate. So what do? They cry, they scream, etc. And we as parents figure out what that cry means. There's one cry that's hunger, one cry that it's I'm wet, one cry. But notice what they are. Like hunger is I want food. It's a tangible function, right? Being wet is an escape function. Get me out of these diapers. Let me escape from these wet diapers. You know what I mean? Right. So it's all the same behavior, but it's just crying. And we identify, oh, this is one type of, that's a pain cry. That's a wet cry. That's a hungry cry. And then as the child ages, like let's say the child becomes 1, we as parents no longer accept that. What do we say? Use your words, right? We tell our kids, use your words. Is that what you want? Do you want juice? Do you want this? And we teach our typically developing kids how to use their words instead of crying. What happens when a 2 or 1.5 or 2 or 3 year child is diagnosed? We as parents get scared and we're like, oh, I can't put the same contingencies because he has autism. So I'm going to try to figure out, because he doesn't have language, I'm going to try to figure it out. So what ends up happening is you treat the child the same way you did when he was a baby, instead of asking the child to use his words. So over time, the only thing the child learns is the only way I can communicate with these people is if I cry, if I hit, the child is not to blame because that's the only thing he's learned. Mm-hmm. And once the child learns some other acceptable form of communication, then that replaces it. Okay. But it will only replace it if the inappropriate, the challenging behavior didn't get him what he wanted and the appropriate one did, and if the appropriate form of communication was easier. It has to be easier than hitting you. It has to be faster. Like throwing a tantrum is pretty exhausting for a child, you know? And if you can give the child an easier way to request something, they'll always turn to that.
Okay. So it could be a combination of reasons why this child is
thank you for saying that. That's a very important fact too, because you have a child who has always multiple functions. Very good point. So it's not always simple. It's not always like, oh, I hit because I wanted that object. Sometimes it's, I hit because I wanted that object, but I also enjoy the attention I get when you come and try to take care of me. Okay. Attention is another function. Mm-hmm. And so, yes, often it's multiple functions, and it's very hard to get rid of behaviors that have multiple functions because you really do need to kind of prevent both functions. So like in that case, you would want to make sure the child doesn't get the object and doesn't get attention. So that's a very important fact. And so, you know, to figure out what the function of the behavior is for your child, either it's really obvious, like you are looking at the child and you take something away and the child tantrums, or it's not obvious, in which case I recommend that you try to get a behavior analyst in there to do a functional assessment. Functional assessments are very important. And once you have the functional assessment, then the treatment plan is very obvious because there's only so many treatments that go with each function. By the way, if you go on Skills, which is our database, and it is www.skillsforautism.com. On Skills, there's a section that says BIP Builder and CIFA, C-I-F-A, and CIFA stands for Cards Indirect Functional Assessment. So it's a bunch of questions that you're asked about a behavior, and you answer those questions, and then the CIFA identifies the function for you. And let's say it says, oh, it's an attention function. Then you take that and it goes into the BIP Builder. So you say, oh, what do I do when the child hits and the function is attention? Then BIP Builder gives you a whole ton of solutions and says, these are the things you can do when it's an attention function. These are the things you can do when it's hitting, but it's a tangible function. So, but you have to use the CIFA to get the function first.
Okay. Also, how can I encourage functional play?
That's a really good question, and that's a hard question to answer briefly. So there's a few different things about play. One is that you need to have skills. You can't just throw a child in with other kids and expect them to play. You have to have skills. And the skills are varied. There's a huge number of skills involved in play. It starts with being able to look at other kids, like realistically. Some of our kids are so involved in their own universe that they don't even give eye contact to someone else. So it starts with that. It starts with just being able to attend to other kids. So that would be one skill. And as I always say, and Shannon always says here, the thing about ABA that makes it work is that you break things apart into very small segments and you work on each one, and you don't try to do it all at once. You teach the skills first and then you bring it together. And a lot of times it just becomes very difficult because our kids are older and they're in the environment already, and our time with them. If it was in an experimental setting where we had the child all day long, we could teach them pretty much anything, but we don't. So let's say you play itself. So it starts with just attending to other kids, which is a program in and of itself, which involves the child like stopping what they're doing, looking at an individual, tracking the individual, and if their level of functioning allows it, even actually being able to say what they saw. So attendance is one thing. The second thing is an observation and attending. So that's first. Second thing is all the content of play. So if it's a 2-year-old, we're talking about basic games, you know, like very nursery rhyme type stuff. If it's a 5-year-old, we're talking about constructive play, building things perhaps, or arts and crafts. If it's an 8-year-old, we're talking about card games. I mean, every age has a different type of play, and so it becomes very, very important to identify the age and the type of play that we're talking about. All of that, by the way, is on Skills in the play curriculum. It's all developmentally normed, so you'll never get, for a 2-year-old, you'll never get a game that's appropriate for a 3-year-old or a 5-year-old. It has to be age appropriate. And then, of course, it has a lot to do with culture and location and gender. So, you know, let's say you're a girl, you're going to be more playing with dolls. If you're a boy, you're going to be more playing with cars. I mean, and that's a given. And then the second thing is just kind of location and culture. So, you know, some schools, a lot of the play that occurs has musical activities just because they've set up the school and the environment that way. Some schools or some activities, like if you have a play group at someone's home, it really depends on what is set up. Like the parents may have set up, oh, this is going to be a swimming party, or this is going to be we're going to have hide and seek type games, or we're going to have whatever it is, right? That's the environmental factors. But your child needs to learn all the content for that. So there's no point throwing a child into a group of other kids if the child doesn't know how to play the things they're about to play. So if your child doesn't know the rules for hide and seek, they're not going to participate. If they don't know the rules for a board game, they're not going to participate. So all those games have to be taught as well. And so you have to teach the games, you have to teach all the surrounding information, right? All the stuff that goes with the games. And then you have to, in addition to that, you also have to teach the child how to identify certain key things, like what can I play with whom? So for instance, this now goes to a little bit more advanced, which is, like if I'm walking towards a group of kids and they're all playing something, then I need to join. I can't suddenly go in there and say, hey guys, let's play my thing, right? If I'm walking towards one other person, do I know this person? Have we played before? What's the history there? So there's a whole bunch of subjective stuff that goes into functional play. But to simplify it, and it hopefully the person who wrote this, I don't know what age range your child is, but you basically start by identifying the age range, the gender, and the types of activities that the peers of your child are engaged in. And you make sure that your child is the best at those particular games, because any child who's really, really good at particular games becomes popular, as long as they can somewhat cope with or do okay with all the peripheral stuff, like joining and sharing, turn taking. All of these things are involved in games. I would really recommend that you do actually access skills, because everything I said and a lot more is in the play curriculum area of skills. That should be able to help a little bit.
Okay. It looks like that was the same parent that wrote about their 2-year-old.
Okay, so it's a 2-year-old, you're in great shape, because when we're looking at 2-year play skills, it's easy. These are basic things that we're teaching at this point. A lot of it is just pretend play. You're starting maybe even at 3 or 4, but right now you're just doing really basic nursery games, and that's going to be very easy to teach.
Okay. Question, is 40 hours a week of ABA therapy too much for a 2-year-old boy?
Right, so that's a very good question too. It depends. Some of our kids who are very active, they settle into 40 hours okay, because 40 hours, it's not all sit down in one place. Right. As you know, it's like moving around and teaching play and all this kind of stuff, so it's not that bad. But for some of our kids, it becomes overwhelming. What I do, a 2-year-old who just turned 2 yesterday, it's probably too much for them. But a 2-year-old who's in their 3rd quarter of being 2 is probably not too much for them. So what I would do is I would take the year between 2 and 3, and I would kind of shape the child into it. Usually when I have a very young child, like brand new 2-year-old, I'll start with about 15 hours. And then after, like, let's say a month or so, I'll add 5 hours and keep adding until the child works their way up to 40.
And how long would they be at the 40 hours?
So the research says that the 40 hours is, so far the research has shown that the 40 hours should be occurring all the way through for at least 2 years, if not more. Okay. From my personal experience, 40 hours is great, and honestly 50 hours is great, and 60 is great. Really? You could do, absolutely. I mean, when parents could afford it, we would do all day long, right? So Nancy, the funny thing is that I was telling Shannon this a few months ago. All of this is dependent on one really important study that came and then was replicated multiple times. But the very beginning study was, of course, the Lovas study. Right. And that was 1987. And people always say past that 40 hours. It wasn't 40 hours. It was 40 hours of time that we did, the therapists at UCLA did. What was recommended was all waking hours. The reason we said 40 hours was because we said parents go to work 40 hours a week. So when the parents are working, we're covering, so we're doing the therapy, and that's 40 hours. So we, as professionals or paraprofessionals, would do 40 hours, and parents would do another 20, 30 hours when they came home on the weekends, and so on and so forth. So when parents, in cases where it's all been like very, very wealthy families who are able to afford it, we don't do 40 hours. We do all waking hours. So it's from the time the child wakes up, ideally, and you know this to be true. Like if there's a really good behavior analyst with your child, or a behavioral therapist, technician who's trained with your child from the time they wake up to the time they sleep, obviously the child's going to learn a ton more. There's no end to how much they can learn. The issue is that, unfortunately, we don't have research published that shows all waking hours is really what's intended. And so a lot of the funding agencies are reducing it. We also don't have a lot of research that looks at the kids past 2.5 years. Because it's very hard to have a cohort of kids that you're tracking for 2.5 years. So now all the funding agencies come back and say, oh, well, the research shows you're supposed to do 40 hours for 2.5 years, or 2 to 3 years, but nothing past that. We all know that past that it's still effective. We just can't prove it because we haven't done the research to show. And we really should. But it's just so incredibly difficult to track kids for that period of time. Now, having said that, every child is different, and the 40 hours, so the whole concept of the 40 hours, or the whatever, every waking hours, the intensive ABA, is to do as much of it as you need for that child. So that's the ideal. And you're supposed to be looking at the trajectory of growth. So when the child gets to the point where they're learning just as fast as they're aging, or maybe they're even learning faster than they're aging, then you can start fading your hours, because now, as Lovas used to say, they've learned to learn. They're learning to learn from their environment. They'll learn even when you're not teaching them. That's the key, because if they don't learn unless you're in their face, you're always going to have to do therapy, right? But if they start to pay attention to other things, then they're going to keep learning, and you will cut out the therapy and they'll still keep improving. That's the thing about it. So, but you know, it's always a priority. When you look at 40 hours of ABA, then you can't have school and 40 hours of ABA. It becomes very difficult. And the world has said, oh, we need to put our kids in school. But in reality, and things are changing right now, it's interesting, this current time frame of life, a lot of kids are doing in-home schooling or online schooling, which is very personal, like it's individualized. And that is very, very different. But we still have requirements, you know, like, so a lot of our kids spend an incredible amount of time doing like math and English. And it's maybe never going to be functional for them. Never. They're never going to use it. So I would much rather, of course, use that time for our kids to teach them daily living skills, like using money, going out, shopping, taking care of themselves, chores, washing themselves, making food for themselves, all the things they need to survive later. Job skills, you know what I mean? We're talking about why he was 15. We should actually be working with him already on teaching him some form of pre-vocational skills, because once he is at an age where he's going to want to find a job, it's going to take longer to teach him. We want to make sure he's ready to go. And there's so much school that takes up time. So it's like, it's impossible to do that. And there's no funding anymore as he ages. And so the system is still faulty. The correct system would allow us at a much younger age to start teaching the kids the stuff they need. And not necessarily, you know, geography. Like, why does he need to know geography?
The practical application of that is like, how much are they going to use that in their adult life, right?
Exactly. Or any of our kids for that matter, but especially our kids on the spectrum,
Okay, so the short answer is 40 hours a week of ABA therapy too much for a 2-year-old boy? Is absolutely not.
Not, exactly.
Okay. All right, we'll take another quick break and we'll be back with more of Ask Dr. Doreen.
Hi, I'm Yvonne Johansson, and this is My Little House.
My Little House is an interactive, multi-sensory educational felt toy that I invented. to help develop children's language skills.
I love my little house.
I've been working as a speech therapist for over 20 years. I have spent my entire career working with young children. I work with children with language delays, and I have many children with significant cognitive disabilities and children on the autism spectrum. It has been a constant challenge finding toys that are fun, educational, and actually engage my students. In every preschool since I've been a young therapist, we carry on these felt boards. Kids love them because they're soft and they're fluffy, and there's usually these little pieces that attach to these boards because felt sticks onto felt. You bring them into the activity because they're putting a piece on the board. So it's almost kind of like magic. So then I just thought, wouldn't it be great if I could just take this one-dimensional board and make it into an actual three-dimensional toy? How cool would that be?
That's the idea behind My Little House. You can spread it out flat like a 4-panel felt board, or here's the cool part. In the blink of an eye, My Little House easily converts into a 3-dimensional reversible house.
This is the outside. This is the inside.
My Little House comes with 36 felt cutout pieces that match outlines in 8 colorful rooms. And they're felt, so they stick. Each piece inside My Little House has been placed with purpose.
For instance, in the kitchen, whole half, under on top, inside, big, bigger, and biggest, empty and full, circle, triangle, inside, outside.
Really cool thing, I have a nonprofit, Lecotech. They are the folks that put out the Differently Abled Guide for Toys R Us. They've been doing it for 25 years. They gave me their seal of approval as a toy that they feel is a toy with purpose, and that will make a difference. But My Little House isn't just for kids on the spectrum or with significant disorders. It's also for typically developing 2 to 5-year-olds. It's a fun toy.
Oh, this is so soft. That piece goes.
Recently, I took My Little House to the American Speech and Hearing Association convention in Philadelphia, and the response from my peers was overwhelming. Hundreds of therapists, teachers, and heads of school districts wanted to order them.
It was real validation for me that this truly is a toy that needs to get out there.
Hi, I'm Shannon Penrod. I'm a proud autism mom, I'm a former educator, and I am the host of Autism Live. And as all 3 of those things, I want to recommend to you My Little House. This is one of the smartest toys I have ever seen for teaching language to kids who have emerging language. Whether they're on the autism spectrum or completely neurotypical, it's a great, fun, reinforcing toy, but it's especially great for our kids that are on the autism spectrum because it makes learning fun and it makes it tactile. They have these felt shapes and they get to match them up. And I'm telling you, even the adults love to play with this. We loved this toy so much that we wanted to be able to bring it to you at a great discount. So right now, if you will go to www.smartfelttoys, and when you get to the coupon code, put in a-live.com, you'll get $5 off. Isn't that great? So I want to encourage you, go and get My Little House for all the kiddos in your life.
And we are back with more of Ask Dr. Doreen, which is your chance to ask Dr. Doreen Grandpichet your questions about your child's behavior. We have someone that has written in a question, I am the parent of an 8-year-old boy in Pakistan. He never uses his words when it comes to potty time, only when he wants attention. How can I convince him to use potty time words at the right place and time?
Well, so you have to pair giving attention to when he goes to the bathroom. So basically, don't give him attention otherwise. When he put him on a schedule, first of all, a lot of times people forget that the first thing we do for going to the bathroom is actually putting the child on a schedule. So that's very important. So a buzzer goes off at specific intervals, and I don't know the frequency with which your child goes to the bathroom, but you have to have a schedule. And then when the buzzer goes off and it's time for your child to go to the bathroom, you will go up to your child and prompt the child to ask for going to the potty, and then you'll give a ton of attention and reinforcers and whatever else it is. And if he likes attention, which we know he does because he asks for it outside of this will work. And then what you do is you gradually will reduce, so the buzzer will continue on an interval. The intervals will get longer, or they'll get more accurate, let's put it that way. And then when the buzzer goes off, you will gradually fade yourself from prompting the child. So when the buzzer goes off, the child's like, I gotta go to the bathroom, I'm gonna go ask daddy or mommy. And then the child will come and say, gotta go to the bathroom, and then you'll give him a bunch of attention. So I have to go to the bathroom, or just the word potty becomes the child's discriminative stimulus or instruction to you for attention. So like, I don't know how the child's asking for attention now, but later on what they'll be doing is every time they say, I have to go to the bathroom, that's almost to you should be like asking for attention. So whenever they say it, you will light up, give them a lot of attention, take them to the bathroom, make going to the bathroom a positive thing. If children who ask for attention vocally are very easy to work with because they really crave your attention, and that's the easiest thing you can give for anything.
Okay.
So that's great.
All right, we have a couple of questions about some oppositional behaviors here.
Yes.
One says, good morning. My 12-year-old has GAD, generalized anxiety disorder, and ODD, oppositional defiance disorder. He refuses everything my husband and I ask him to do, especially brush teeth or shower. It goes from him being angry at us to then crying. It's a constant battle. I don't know what to do or where to begin. His defiance is draining us.
How old?
12 years old.
12. Okay, so there's a lot there, and let's talk about that for a few minutes. I hate that the diagnosis of ODD, oppositional defiant disorder, because usually no one is really oppositional or defiant unless they are frustrated and their environment is not really giving them enough reinforcers. So there's something wrong when the child is oppositional and defiant, and it has to do with they're unhappy. Happy people don't become oppositional or defiant. So there's something causing that. And generalized anxiety, of course, is really important that you identify kind of how you can help the anxiety. I'm not sure if the child is on medication or, you know, these two other things, even on their own, generalized anxiety and ODD are both very incredible, massive diagnoses on their own. And now to have generalized anxiety and ODD and autism all at the same time, we're talking about a hot mess. Like, you have so much going on here. So let's try to start by doing a few different things. I can give you advice, and I will give you advice here today, but your child is 12, and this is a pretty complicated case. And honestly, my recommendation is, it's almost like you need a complicated surgery. So if I was to give you very basic instructions, I'm not sure how much help it would give you. I'll give them to you right now, but what is better is if you kind of go to school and learn surgery a little bit. So it would be very important for you to go on the site Institute for Behavioral Training, which is ibehavioraltraining.com, ibehavioraltraining.com. And go in there and go on the parents section and start learning. Some of this stuff is very easy to learn, but it's important that you get the concept down. So there's no way, I mean, it's hours and hours and hours of lectures. I could tell you very basically what I told you the early part of this show, which is you have to identify the function of a behavior before you try to deal with it. It teaches you how to deal with tantrums. It teaches you how to deal with these oppositional and defiant behaviors in a behavioral way, in the right way. Now, with your child, so that's really important, because I'll just tell you some basic things here. First of all, you list all the things that your child refuses to do. So each of them individually. Brushing teeth is one whole project. Showering is one whole project. You do not want to, you're putting all of them together, and that's not going to work. So you list all of them. So, and it might end up being 25 things.
Right.
Like, you know, he doesn't want to wake up. He doesn't want to get dressed. He doesn't want to brush his teeth. He doesn't want to shower. He doesn't want to come to the breakfast. I don't know what they are, but list them all out. And you are going to pick the easiest to start with. So the one that is probably the easiest to change. And you are, let's just say it's going to be, I don't know, whichever one it is. And you're going to have a whole bunch of these. One by that, and what you've identified is just the topography of the behavior. You've described what the behavior is, but you don't know what the function is. So now you have all that list of behaviors, right? And so all of the things that he is refusing to brush teeth, is refusing. What does he do when he refuses? I assume he tantrums, he screams, cries, I don't know what it is. And so now you write that next to it. What is the actual topography? What is he doing? Like he's kicking, he's hitting, he's tantruming, he's whatever it is. Now you have a little bit more information. So let's say I tell him to go brush teeth and he will scream and cry and tantrum. So what is he doing? He's avoiding brushing teeth. Great. So we have a little bit more information. Now the question is why? Why is he avoiding? So that's now trying to figure out the function. Some of our kids avoid brushing teeth because they don't like the feeling of something in their mouth, like a toothbrush. Some of our kids don't like the taste of their toothpaste. Some of our kids don't want to go to the bathroom alone. Some of our kids don't know all the steps in order. So I don't know what it is, but you have to figure out why he's trying to avoid brushing teeth. It also could be because he enjoys causing you to freak out. So that could be one reason as well, is that he's just saying no, because when he says no, you go into a frizzy and he enjoys that.
Would that be getting attention?
That would be getting attention. And that's negative attention, but it doesn't matter. To our kids, negative attention is sometimes the same as positive attention. So he could be just feeling, you know what, I'm just going to, or sometimes with our kids, they just want to control the situation. They're tired of giving in to everything you tell them to do. So they just say, no, I refuse to do it right now. You have to figure out the reasons, because all of these things can be fixed, all of it. So let's say he's just tired and he wants more control. Well, then that tells us that in his entire day, I need to give him more free time. I need to give him more time to do his own thing so that he perceives it as a fair day. Let's say he just wants to take you off. So then that tells us that, oh, I better not react in front of him. I better just, like, if he doesn't do his thing, I either need to motor him over there to do it, or I need to ignore it. One or the other, but I definitely can't be giving attention, because that's what he's trying to accomplish.
Right.
If it's something as basic as he can't handle that thing in his mouth, you know, because it's brushing teeth and showering, I wonder if he's a very highly sensory kid. Like some of our kids are very highly sensitive to sensory input. So it could be that. Some of our kids don't like shower because the water is falling on their head and it bothers them. It feels weird. And you have to teach that skill before they're comfortable with it. Brushing teeth is the same thing. So you would start with, let's say, a cloth, a washcloth, and then once he's used to using that, then you would start with a very, very soft toothbrush. Then you would go to a harder and harder toothbrush. Like, you really have to identify the reason for the whole thing, because it's not like the child's just doing it for no reason at all. There's always a reason. And once you identify the reason, then what you do, again, going back to what I was saying before, is you help the child. If it's an antecedent that you can change, like you can change the type of the toothbrush, you can have the child take baths before they get used to or have a handheld shower, which most of our kids love because it allows them to control it. There's a lot of stuff you can do to make the task easier. But at the same time, you want to make sure then that you don't allow the child to get out of doing something just because they threw a fit, threw a tantrum, but that you allow the child to get out of it if they ask nicely. So that's a very important task as well. Now, so you're teaching the child to ask nicely, but then there are certain things like hygiene things that you have to have the child do. The only way you can make that successful is you break it down into smaller pieces, you help more, and you reward more. You break it down, you help more, and you reward more. So for brushing teeth, break it down. Go and get his toothbrush out, an easy toothbrush, because we don't know, maybe it's bothering him. Put a good tasting toothpaste on there and get it wet. Do it as much as you can, and all he has to do is brush. And the way we teach brushing teeth, for instance, is you even do the brushing, you just let him finish. It's called backward chaining. So you minimize the demand. You make the request as minimal as possible so that it's easy for the child to succeed. And you increase the reinforcer. So you give tons of reinforcer for that, so that he's next time wants to get the reinforcer. It's really that simple. So all of these behaviors, refusing to do daily tasks that are important, all you have to do is break them down, make them easier, and reinforce them heavily. And then gradually over time, you make them harder and you reduce the reinforcer. But that's like over the course of a month, right? So it's a very gradual process.
Okay.
That's like sort of the long answer. But honestly, I think when you have so many issues going on, it will really benefit you if you do get that training.
And here's somewhat along the same lines. Whenever
Sure.
I ask my 11-year-old to get ready to get out the door, even if it's for something fun like a movie,
Yes.
he is super slow and we all have to wait for him. I know he likes to push my buttons and doesn't do anything I ask him to, shower, eat dinner, brush teeth. How do I get him to do anything when he refuses constantly? I am grandma, and he lives with me now along with his 2 younger sisters. Thank you.
Yeah, and those are very much the same issues.
Yes.
The first, some of it is also time. Some of our kids just dawdle all the time, you know, and part of that is avoidance, and very smart of mom to or grandma to figure that out. Our kids are very clever, and they figured out that if I just take long, they might leave me alone. At some point, let me tell you, that has happened. Like, he's taken so long that people have, the initial demand has been ignored, or he's gotten out of the initial demand by taking so long. These types of things, you really benefit if you have some behavior therapists in the home, because they then try to teach the child to speed things up. They do what I just said, which is they reduce the task demand, they increase the reinforcer, and they gradually reverse it. It's hard because when you're trying to keep up with a schedule, when you have other things that are going on in life, when you have other kids perhaps or other people and your grandma, and there's so much going on, you cannot teach new skills in the course of life. It becomes incredibly difficult. Like, that's actually the primary reason that when funding cuts out and when our kids are in school, it becomes so hard to teach them anything, because they have to keep up with school. They have to keep up with the schedule. They have to keep up with after-school activities. They have to keep up. And so we never have pure time to work on these particular issues. If you had pure time to work on just the issue of, like, go get ready, then he would get really good at that task and he would become fluent. A lot of our kids are not fluent with tasks, or they just prefer to do something else. I'm pretty sure in this scenario, like, he's either just preferring to do something else, or he doesn't get the concept of time at all, and maybe it would be good for him to miss the movies or something. I don't know if he enjoys the movies. I'm not sure. But all of those types of things, you're better off getting a behavior analyst who can come in and really analyze the situation and figure out each scenario so that they can help kind of reverse it in the right way.
Okay.
These are complicated. You know this, Nancy.
Yes.
Like, when it hits real life and the child is older, it's hard because there's so much
very
going
hard.
on.
There's so many demands on the time. So, like you
there's
said,
so many demands. There's so many demands on your time as the parent.
Right.
And there's so many environmental factors that are influencing the child at any given time. It's like, why doesn't he like this activity? Why is he tantruming? All that.
Yes.
That's very hard.
So those, I think we've kind of done it here in terms of time. So
That's great.
we appreciate your time with us today, Dr. Doreen.
It's always a pleasure. Thank
Always
you so
wonderful
much for covering
you to
for
sharing
Shannon.
your knowledge with us. Good morning and welcome to Let's Talk Autism with Shannon and Nancy. I'm Nancy Oswald-Jackson.
And I'm Shannon Penrod. We've got a huge show for you, including we're going to talk about this little guy on the desk in a little while. And it's been a big week especially for you. I think it's been a big week for a lot of people, and there are a lot of things that we're gonna talk about.
Right.
Even some things that you've been in the news a lot. And we're going to talk about all that later.
Okay.
But we want to start out the show with our fabulous guest, Vince Redmond.
Right.
Do we have him on yet? Are we? Oh, he's there.
Okay, Vince is there.
Vince is there. And Vince is, for those of you who are just tuning in and joining us for the first time, Vince Redmond is an amazing licensed and marriage family therapist. He's been with the Center for Autism and Related Disorders for, 708 years, Vince? It's been
something like that.
Something like that.
It's going on that.
A long, long time. And Vince started out working directly one-on-one with kids on the autism spectrum, and then went on to become a licensed marriage and family therapist. I always like to say that in the realm of, we all know that we need some form of counseling. You just can't get through this completely on your own. You need something. And a lot of times, I know Jim and I went to go to counseling, and we were met with somebody who said, well, I've heard your story, and I think you should stop doing that ABA thing that you're doing, right? It's totally not useful.
Right.
So what a gift Vince is to us and to the world, that he can see things on both sides of that fence. What you need to do to stay married and have happy family and happy everyone, siblings and everybody, but he gets the ABA thing and why you're all in on ABA, which we love. So Vince, if you haven't heard, I adore the ground you walk on. And we're so thrilled and fortunate to have you here on a regular basis. And thank you so much for being with us. Are you having happy holidays so far?
So far, it's been busy.
Yeah, that's the word, right? Busy.
It has not been a dull moment yet.
Which dovetails right into our topic for the day, which is anxiety. And
I have some.
Do you have some anxiety?
I don't know how anybody could not
how
right
could
now.
anybody not?
Yeah.
Right.
Christmas just came up on us so quick, and unfortunately that brings a lot of anxiety with it, because we feel like we need to prepare, and preparing all those extra duties that we have can make it very stressful.
Yeah. Well, and I think that's just the tip of the iceberg, right? Because I don't know about everybody else, but anytime, even now, when Jem is doing so well, when things come up that remind me that our situation isn't what other people's situation is, it's a and the more that he was affected by it, the more there was that of, oh, right, we don't get to have it like everybody else, which what brought up anxiety in me, and then I think that brought up anxiety in him. So everybody's got a touch of it. But Vince, talk to us a little bit about, from the parents' perspective, and about what we can do about our anxiety, and then what we do with our kids when they're having anxiety.
I think you just touched a little bit on the first thing, is that it's typical that we all have anxiety during this time, right? It's the holiday season, which it's glorious and it's lovely and it's fantastic, but it also creates a lot of pressure, a lot of stress, a lot of timelines, and we're doubling that with, also we got to make sure we're maintaining treatment, and we're maintaining our appointments, and making sure that our kids are continuing progressing, and we don't want them to regress at any point during this time. So there's a lot of extra stressors, extra anxiety that our families feel that not everybody else feels. So we're adding on top of our regular holiday anxiety, the anxiety of making sure treatment continues, make sure that everything is going to be okay. Now it dovetails into some of the things you were saying in regards to where does some of that extra anxiety come from with the kids. And remember, at holiday season, a lot of change happens, right? So change that we actually look forward to, but with our kids, they might not understand some of the change. Lights are on trees, lights are on houses, parties change, schedules change, right? Sometimes we rearrange our house, right? So there's a lot of environmental programmatic changes that happen that create more, a lot of times unsaid, kind of more of a lower level anxiety with our kids that we need to address. We need to be able to talk them through it. We need to be able to point out the changes, make sure that they're comfortable that it's okay that the light, the house next door is now lit up, or that there's a tree in our living room now, or there's a candle that's in the entryway or whatever it may be, that we make sure that we talk to them about it, make sure we give them information so that they are aware that these changes are happening and why.
Yeah, I just as you're saying this, there was a moment yesterday, because a lot of us here in Southern California have been really affected by fires in the last 24 hours. And
which is just what you need to have to evacuate on top of everything else, right?
Well, but I didn't end up having to evacuate last night, but I know people who did evacuate.
Right.
But that evacuating is inconvenient. Coming back to your house burned down to the ground is a whole other thing.
Right.
And I was amazed by how many people were saying it's just stuff, it's just stuff. Good on them, because I would have been crying, around all the ashes. But there was a point yesterday when things were getting a little hairy, and where we live, there were 2 fires. So my son's school got closed, and I needed to meet my husband. We had to get my husband to work. It was all this rigmarole, and we weren't sure what to do about the dog. So I said, put the dog in the car. I'll meet you halfway. I'll take the dog. I'll go home, and if we have to evacuate, I'll be packing stuff. But so the dog got in the car. We all had gas masks on, not gas masks, but filter masks on. And my dog was having this little reaction to it. And I was explaining to Gemma, I said, well, if you look at it from her perspective, we had stopped and gotten some In-N-Out for her so she would be in the car and okay. So we were feeding her hamburgers and French fries in the back seat. But we took a picture and she had this look on her face and I said to her, she's thinking, what crazy holiday is this where it's all smoky and you guys are wearing masks and you feed me hamburgers? Yeah. Are we going to the place where they, lock me up and you guys go away for days? What's going on here? Like, you could feel her anxiety because she was like, this is not ordinary. Yeah. And I think holidays, we had the Sensitive Santa on Saturday, and kids were coming in, and I was reminding parents, this is a big guy in a red suit that they don't see on a regular. Right. It just seems all so weird and random, and all the adults are acting like it's okay, but it's pretty random.
It is. It's
pretty.
When you think about it, right? I mean, a lot of we look forward to it because we understand the changes. We understand what's going on, and a lot of our kids, depending on how many experiences they've had with the holidays, this is all new. Right? Yeah. Every year it's new again. Every year it's new again. The house is changing, the neighborhood changes, the music changes, schedules change. Some of the stuff that we take for granted, our daily routines, those change. School gets out.
School gets out, yeah. That's the cause of a lot of stress because of the holiday. With our kids out of school, we don't necessarily know what to do with them.
Right.
And even the food changes. There's a lot more sugar and things that can mess them up. I mean, there's a lot of stuff going on. And we kind of accept it as just being, oh, this is it. But to them, it's got to look weird.
It has to.
Right. And again, that's why we want to talk to them about it, acknowledge it, work them through it, right? Anxiety is always, they experience a lot of anxiety for multiple different reasons throughout, their lifespan, and also throughout the year if we're looking at it just in a condensed year form.
And Vince, if I can interrupt you for just a second, because I can just hear some parents who are saying, but my kid doesn't have language. Do we assume with all kids receptively we still language it in hopes that some of it will make a certain amount of sense?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
I think that's
so
important.
For nonverbal children, we still need to verbalize what's going on.
About it.
Yeah,
absolutely. That's a perfect way of saying it, Nancy. You want to verbalize with them, talk to them about the changes, identify the changes so that they know that you're aware of the changes as well. A lot of times, their anxiety will be remediated if they know that the parents are aware of the changes, if the parents are accepting. If they see the parents aren't upset that there's lights on the house next door, their anxiety will slowly lower over time because they'll see that it's not anything to be anxious about. And they don't have to be able to say those things to really understand.
Yeah, we are going to, in the news in a little while, talk about a recent study that's out that suggests that, it's sort of the chicken and the egg, which comes first, anxiety and then not being able to participate in social moments, that they just fly by you, or is it the other way around, that you're not able to participate in social things and that anxiety comes from that? Well, a lot of people have said that it's the second, but this study suggests that it may be
exacerbates social communication problems and not the other way around.
Yeah, and there's, I think it could probably be both, but it makes sense to me that one of the big takeaway, I don't know that, because they said that they were trying to look at people over the years and they lost a lot of people in their sample, but the takeaway that I got from it was, don't let anxiety go, treat it. If you're thinking, well, my child has anxiety, and so we're just going to see, because maybe by the time he's 5, he won't. And they were saying, not a good plan. Your child is going to lose out on more things. But Vince, when we've got a 3 and a 4 and a 5-year-old who have got anxiety, and people say treat it, I think the assumption is that people are talking about medicating it, and nobody wants to do that. But
there is actually no way to medicate anxiety when children with autism.
But I think that's what the preconception that parents have, that you're going to drug my child.
Right.
But so talk to us a little bit about what would we do with a 3-year-old or a 4-year-old or a 5-year-old who's having a lot of anxiety?
I think you're both right. I think just societal norm, when they hear doctors and research that come out and say that they need to treat anxiety, I think everyone's first reaction that's outside of our field is that it's a medicinal intervention for anti-anxiety medications and so forth. However, 100% agree that's not what they're alluding to. They're alluding to typically behavioral treatments to reduce anxiety, build coping strategies, build understandings of different things. And when you're talking with a 3 and a 4-year-old, first we have to identify where some of their anxieties are coming from, where some of their stressors are coming from. Some of it might be communication, that they're not being able to communicate. Some of it might be, again, like you said, environmental, and some of it might be part of their disorder in regards to change of schedule or not being able to perseverate on certain behaviors or on certain objects, because we're there changing it. We're there, integrating in new behaviors and more of socially and functionally appropriate behaviors. That creates anxiety, right? We're changing the way they stimulate themselves. We're changing the way that they, to some extent, entertain themselves to try to teach them new ways. That creates anxiety. So when we can identify the type of anxiety, then we can always come up with behavioral treatments to be able to either desensitize or have more exposure to positive practices. We can, talk, with higher level anxieties, we might be able to talk to them about the anxieties, talk to them about schedule changes, give more visual reminders of schedule changes that might be upcoming, using more transitional warnings. Lots of different things that we can do behaviorally to help mediate any type of anxiety.
One of the things that I think is amazing at CARD is that for families that are not getting ABA, you're going to have to put this together yourself. If you're getting good quality ABA, we can all say the recommendation would be to start talking to your team about it to see what they can do. But I think it doesn't treat the whole thing. And one of the things that I find particularly stellar at CARD is that now, because Vince, you head up the CARD Family Services, that somebody, if you are a CARD family and if you, the parent, and or the child is having anxiety, and I find that most times it's both, right? And that's just across the board. It's both. Right. That you can talk to your supervisor to make your team aware and deal with that. But then the other arm of it is that they can talk to you and CARD or someone else on your team, Vince, in CARD Family Services, and then you can be looking at this and helping to treat the entire family. Is that correct?
Absolutely. And again, it's a busy time of year for this as well. Yeah. Like you were saying earlier, and we're here to support the families. Families feel different types of anxieties. There's other family anxieties that get involved. There's work anxieties, there's work pressures, stressors, and so forth. So if there's any families within CARD that ever feel overwhelmed, feel anxious, feel that they need to talk to someone, they obviously do have their team and their supervisors to be able to talk to. But if they feel they need more professional care, more professional ear, they can always contact me in my department as well.
And Vince, are there, this is just out of thin air, but are there any statistics? I feel very strongly that when one or both of the parents is having big anxiety, that the child will have more anxiety. Do you find that in your practice? It's pretty much a reality, right?
Yeah. The more the parents are feeling and displaying their anxieties about whatever the topics may be, the more the research does show that children will then demonstrate more anxious type of behavior. And so if the parents are anxious about things, regardless if they're actually talking about their anxieties in front of the children will be able to feel that anxiety and most likely will raise some of their own anxiety.
And I'm going to call foul on myself here because, you know, I had a little bit of a, you know, I call it a nervous breakdown in the second year of therapy because I became agoraphobic and couldn't leave my house and couldn't drive my car. And, you know, my life got real small and I was having lots of panic attacks. And I wasn't going to do a thing about that. I just, you know, I'm just going to be honest with all of you. I was going to sit in my house. And I remember sitting one day and thinking, oh, gosh, I guess when he graduates from college, I won't be able to go.
Really?
You know?
It was that intense.
I like wasn't going to drive my car again.
Yeah, and I can share some of my experiences too. But after my husband's death, how last year I had my version of a nervous breakdown.
And you know, I don't know about you, but I was like, well, it's all about Jem, and I'm going to take care of him, but I'm not going to take care of me. And it wasn't until a day when I had forced myself to go out because it was something that he wanted to do. And we weren't out 10 seconds and I was, you know, like totally having a panic attack. And he said, I want to go home. I want to go home. I want to go home. I feel like I'm dying. And I was like, what? And I didn't remember ever voicing that, but I must have, because he didn't invent it as a, you know, a 4-year-old. And he said, I want to go home, I want to go home, I want to go home. I don't feel good, I don't feel good, I want to go home. And I thought, oh no, I have done this to my child. And that was when we got me help.
Yeah, and I went into the hospital last December for not just physical, not just a bad kidney infection and passing kidney stones, but also because I was on some anti-anxiety medication that turned out not to be the right medication. And so I went into the hospital for both mental and physical reasons. And now this year, Wyatt keeps saying to me, I was exhausted. Yeah, I mean, I had my own version of a mental breakdown. And this year, Wyatt keeps asking me, Vince, Mommy, when are you going back to the hospital? And he's got anxiety about that. How do I alleviate that anxiety?
Well, the anxiety for you?
For him thinking that I'm going to go back into the hospital. He makes cards, dear Mommy, please don't go back to the hospital. He's constantly saying, are you going to have to go back to the hospital? Because that was his experience last year at this time.
Well, and again, it goes back to what we were talking about earlier, is acknowledging his anxiety and saying, oh, you know, I know you're anxious, I'm going to go back to the hospital. Let's talk about that experience last year. Mommy went to the hospital for X, Y, and Z reasons. The doctors took good care of me, nurses took good care of me. I was able to rest, I was able to get better. This year, Mom, I'm healthy, I feel good, I don't have the kidney infections, I don't have the kidney stones. You know, I don't need to go to the doctors, I don't need to go to the hospital. So this year, we're going to do XYZ, and we move forward, because by acknowledging it and talking about it, it's actually addressing his anxiety, which is, I don't want Mommy to leave again. I don't want Mommy to be away again. I don't want Mommy to be in the hospital, right? To have you removed, again, was something that was completely atypical from what you guys typically do. So when this time of year comes up, it's reminding him of what happened. So you can assure him by not only expressing why you went to the hospital last time, but that it's different this year because you're no longer sick, or you're no longer.
It's also the time of year that my husband went into the hospital before he died.
Yeah, I think he's got it a little bit cemented that around Christmas time, my mom and my dad go in the hospital, and my dad died when he went into the hospital.
Yes, and now he's going to have to go to the hospital for some tests because he had a seizure on Sunday, which he's never had before. Right, so he had a seizure, and now I'm going to have to go and have him taken in for an EEG next week. So he's going to be under some stress as well.
But I would guess that he's going to take his lead from you. Don't you think, Vince, that that's part of what that's going to be?
Yeah,
and that's going to be hard for you.
Yeah, this goes back to what we were saying about parents' anxieties and how they can manifest with the kids. If we're keeping it calm and playful, and this is okay, and it's just a doctor's visit, and they're going to put this weird kind of, sensors on your head, you're going to look like, someone from Star Trek. And, then it's going to reduce some of anxiety that is, now he'll still have some, but that it's not a scary thing. This isn't a removal thing. This is, it's not necessarily even what happened last year. And this kind of breeds over a little bit over into bereavement and bereavement recovery, because he hasn't experienced another Christmas since his father's passing.
He has actually. This will be the second Christmas that he's had since his father's passing.
Right, but the first one is so different,
right.
and you know, it was
actually, it's the first one since his father's passing. You're absolutely right.
Same season, right? It was all
second one. Okay.
So the more he's able to receive or to experience Christmases and the holidays and things that don't involve the hospitalization, don't involve separation from parents, the more that anxiety will alleviate.
Right.
Right. Because right now he's like, oh, this is a pattern.
Right.
And so this year when you don't go into the hospital, then next year it'll be like, yeah, one Christmas mommy went into the hospital, but every other one mommy hasn't.
Right.
And so, you know, this isn't going to, the pattern, you're interrupting the pattern this year.
Yeah.
It's hard.
It's very hard.
It's hard. And you know, and stuff keeps coming up, and just when you get one thing, something else pops up. But I think we all have to remember that while the anxiety is ever present, it's not our friend.
No.
Like, we don't need to hold on to it.
But when you're in anxiety, it's hard to get out of it.
So
and you can't
hard.
just talk yourself out of it.
But we have been doing a lot of things on Thursday. I don't know if I've told you this, Vince, about mindfulness. And that mindfulness is the insurance policy. It isn't so much the thing when you're having the anxiety, right? But it's an insurance policy. And one of the things that I'm finding is if I take the time to do like a 30-second thing, even twice a week, it takes me longer to get to the anxiety than I would have before. So it's the pre-insurance policy. And so that's where I'm at. What do you think, Vince?
Agreed. I mean, there's a lot of mindfulness exercises that are extremely beneficial to mediate and to kind of control anxiety. But you're right in that they have to be utilized when the anxiety is first felt. So when you're feeling the anxiety, or maybe there's a situation that's coming up that you know is going to be anxiety producing, maybe it's public speaking or you know, a party or meeting someone that you haven't met in a time, where you can collect yourself. You can do some of those mindfulness exercises that will control your breathing, will control your thought patterns, will be able to de-escalate some of the rapid thinking, the rapid you know, irrational beliefs that might be going on, so that when we're calm, we can think more logically, we can think more strategically, we can think more you know, balanced, so that when you then experience that anxious situation or anxiety stimuli, then you're better prepared for it, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And Vince, we have to let you go because it's time for you to go. You've got a meeting. But can I just tell you, thank you so much, Vince. You mean so much to us, and you're so helpful to so many people. We wish you the happiest of holidays and Happy New Year, and we can't wait to see you again in January.
We hope it's a little bit less stressful and stress-free for you.
Yeah.
Well, thank you, ladies. Happy holidays to you guys too, and we'll talk soon.
Okay, great.
You. Bye-bye.
Thanks. Bye-bye.
Take care.
Bye-bye. We had a question that came in on Facebook that I just want to really quickly address. Somebody said, hi, my 7-year-old is ASD, ADHD, and showing major defiance. ABA not covered under my private insurance. I don't know how to help him, need some help. He is also still not potty trained number 2. How can I get him on the toilet for number 2? So I just want to say, you know, a lot is about to change with insurance and nobody knows what, but there are policies that please just look to see, and then you can rule it out if it doesn't work. But there are policies that you can get in addition to the policy that you have, even when you have private insurance, that can help to cover ABA. And there have been a lot of people who have discovered that, oh, it's like so affordable, and I can do this in addition. Just check it out. Some people find out it doesn't work for them, but check and eliminate that off the list. You might find, you know, fingers crossed with some things changing, that come January 1st, there are more companies that are going to be covering. Cigna, whether they're self-funded or not, is just going to cover ABA for everyone.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yay to Cigna, okay? So some things are changing and some things are for the better. So take a look and see where you are as of January 1st, because we're, days away. The other thing though, don't wait, is help yourself. Get a 15-day free trial of Skills. They take your credit card, and on the 15th day they will charge it. So look at it for 14 days. But also, and I would say even before that, go to ibehavioraltraining.com and look at the training that they have. It's probably $8-9 for compliance. One of the things that we know with Defiance, if we want to get compliance from a child, is that you have to up your praise, which I think is a great thing to talk about today.
We think it's always the negative that you have to
But
focus
honestly,
on,
I love Hank Moore, who works here. And Hank, if you say to him, somebody in school is having a hard time, and he says, "Oh, have we upped the praise?" That's the first thing he said. "Oh, have we upped the praise?"
So the reinforcers are important.
Yeah, praise, 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 praise. Find something that they do right and praise them for it. And you see them have like a little, like, what just happened?
Right.
Right? Because you've been saying to them, don't do that, don't do that. Because that's what we do as parents.
That's the natural reaction.
We all do that. That's not just you. But go to the other extreme, find something
Positive
to praise.
reinforcers.
And then you will, but there's a whole training about compliance. Then for the potty number 2, you got to up the reinforcer for that. It's different for every kid, but find out what his currency is. We had, they had the Lego Knights that came in the tall cans. And my son, we took him to the toy store. We went around, and he got to put things in the cart, and we saw like what he really wanted. And we said, okay, we're going to buy this Lego Knight in a can. And he was so excited, because we went to the register. He was so excited, and I put it up on the towel bar in front of the toilet. And I said, when you poop, you get that every day. And he didn't get it. He wanted it. And I was like, poop in the potty, yay, and then you'll get it. And it took him 2 days to figure it out. Man, he was like a machine. He was going to figure out how to get a poop in the toilet so he could have that night. And then he took the night, and he got to play with it the rest of the day. And then the next day he went back to take the night, and during the night I had packaged it all up, put it back on the towel bar. And here he comes, and I said, no, poop in the potty, and then you get the night. And it took him probably a week of realizing, oh, she means business about that. And it had, that man, he wanted that night. It's got to be something they want. I have friends who he wanted an ice cream cone. And they said, you poop in the potty, we go for ice cream. And it was like 2 o'clock in the morning, and they went and got in the car and went to the store and got the ice cream cone and the thing.
So identify the positive reinforcer.
And then make that, the only time they get that is when there's poop in the potty. And they will, if it's a big enough reinforcer, they will figure it out. Then there's, there's stuff that you can take data on, and it's feeding them the right stuff and so on and so forth. But that's the short answer of it. Anyway, we're going to take a break. And when we come back, we're going to delve into some news and update you on some things with Nancy. So stick with us.
Welcome back. Thanks for joining me today. For the month of December, we're going to be making wrapping paper. The skills we'll be focusing on today are pattern making, which is an academic skill. While you're doing this, you can also work on colors and shapes with your child. The materials you'll be needing are brown paper bag, paint, water, paintbrush, a tray or paper plate, paper towel, a sharp knife, which the adult will be the only one using, scissors, cookie cutters, and potatoes. And of course, you can always use pre-made stamps or sponges to use. All right, let's get to it. The first thing you want to do is you're going to take your potato and you're going to cut it in half. So now I've got 2 stamps I could possibly use. So I'm going to make a star, and you can always do this freehand. I like the cookie cutters because it makes it a little bit easier. I'm going to take the cookie cutter, I'm going to squish that in there. Then I'm going to take my knife. I'm going to cut along the edge, and then I'm going to pop it out, and voila. Now that I've done this, I'm going to peel out the potato and pull this out, and ta-da, there's my star. I'll be taking my recyclable paper bag and cutting it open. I'm just cutting along the edge. Now that I have this done, I'm going to remove the handles, like so. And then here you are. All right, now that I have this ready, it's a great time to have the kids join in. So I'm grabbing my reusable plate, and while you're squeezing out the paints to use, this is a great time to have your kids label the different colors and to discuss how to mix the colors together to make secondary colors. Now that I have my paint and my stamps ready, well, now it's time to start making the fun patterns. So I've got my piece of paper in front of me. I'm gonna take my star stamp and I'm gonna just dip it in the green paint I just mixed. See that there? And now I'm gonna place it onto my paper. Depending on the skill of your child, when you grab your stamps, you can ask them to label the shapes. You can start making the pattern, and I can ask my child questions like, what comes next? Or have them come up with the pattern themselves, just straight from their head. Here are a few examples of wrapping paper that I completed today. When you complete your wrapping paper, again, I hope you take a photo of it and share it with us on our Facebook page at facebook.com/autism-live. I look forward to seeing them and seeing you next month. Bye.
Can you see me? Can you see me flying by your side?
Welcome back. We got a lot to cover. Now, one of the things that we had mentioned when Vince was with us is, talking about anxiety, that you had an event happen this week that's completely out of the ordinary.
Yes,
first time.
On Sunday, my son had a seizure in the car.
For the first time. Never had a seizure.
No, he's never had a seizure.
Scared the what's out of you.
It was an absolutely terrifying experience. He started convulsing and talking gibberish and convulsing in his seat. We were in the car. Then he passed out. Yeah. And then he came to, and the whole thing lasted about 2 minutes. And I went to the hospital.
You were afraid. Like, you thought when he passed out, you thought you were losing him.
I did. I mean, it's such a terrifying experience. For you parents out there that experience seizures, and I know some of you have kids that have them on a very frequent basis, it's a terrifying experience, and it really rocks you to your core. Yeah. And we went to the hospital, and all the hospital did was kind of do tests to see if he was okay now. Right. They didn't really give me anything to go on. Yeah.
And now you've been inundated with all kinds of information, and you're not unaware of seizures because of being in the autism community, but you're in the moment right now of, I don't know what's happening, and you have to go through the tests.
And I'm taking him to Children's Hospital on Monday to get an EEG and see if there's seizure activity still going on, because this could be the start of something. I don't know.
And in the meantime, you're afraid of, is another one going to happen?
I'm very afraid of that. And am I not going to be with him at the time? Where will he be if another one happens?
And there's a lot of, let's just call, there's a lot of fear and anxiety over that, and a loss of control that comes with all of that. And that would be hard for any parent, but also because it happens to be the holidays and because you're a single parent now and that's relatively new to you. It's all a little much. And I think good on you, Nancy, for sharing that with people, because I think there are other people who are probably dealing with things that are overwhelming for them. Right. And because you always look so put together, Nancy.
Well, on the inside, there's a wreck right now. I can tell you that.
And we should also say, as if that wasn't enough for the week, that you've had a rather intense week, and you've been in the press and had people stalking you.
Some of you may have seen that I've been in the press because I was at one time married to Matt Lauer. And of course, the sexual harassment charges against him have been everywhere, headline news. I don't think there's anybody that's not aware of that. And I've had a lot of press after me for statements and for my insight into that situation, of which
coming to your house.
Yeah. Before this even came out, I had somebody come to my house and knock on my door to tell me it was going to come out, and what was my reaction to it. And of course, I didn't know. They caught me off guard. It was totally out of the blue. And since then, there've been I've had 4 visits to my house from press, wanting comments and statements. I've also had numerous phone calls, requests for interviews, requests for live interviews. I have made statements. I have made a statement I did to ET that ended up on the wire services, that I was shocked that this had happened because it wasn't consistent with the Matt Lauer I know in terms of some of the accusations. That he has, particularly since we've been divorced, has been nothing but kind and wonderful to me. However, I don't want to negate in any way the experiences of what the so-called victims
Yes.
have had to say. By saying that I'm shocked and it's not the person I know, I don't want to in any way negate their experience. So it's a delicate balance.
And in the middle of all of that, I mean, for people to understand that you're still an autism mom raising a 16-year-old by yourself,
right?
And you guys know, we go through our days, and somebody, the first knock on the door, and you were expecting a therapist,
right? And
with the dogs barking, and you open the door thinking it's a therapist,
and I'm there in my pajamas with my hair sticking up everywhere, and it's a reporter.
The dogs are barking, and Wyatt's saying, "Who is this therapist? I don't want her."
Right.
It's like something out of a movie,
right,
quite frankly. And that's, we all turned on our news and saw that, he was let go, and we saw that. But just to know that, there were other things that were happening on top of that. So it's been an extraordinary week for you. Not your typical Nancy Allspa week.
Right.
And, and when you said to me that, when you called me and said that Wyatt had a seizure, I said, well, there's been a lot going on. Like, if there was stress that was, imagine for a boy with autism, having people knocking at the door, stressing you out, and stressing your animals out.
Right.
It's a lot. It's a lot.
It is a lot.
So in any case, we can understand why you have anxiety, and we wanted to at least address that because you have been in the news, and for people to know that that's part of what's going on. Let's take do we have a short break, Samantha, that we can do? We have a lot of news, and I want to talk about the Codapillar. All right, let's talk about the Codapillar then.
Okay.
And I have, I love this guy. We did our Sensitive Santa this weekend, and we have a gift guide out that's right now, a toy and gift guide that gives recommendations to you for lots of different age ranges. And this, my friends, is my preschool top toy of the year. I just think that this Fisher-Price, and it's just, I love that there are so many different things that this toy does. First of all, I don't know a child who wouldn't want to play with this, right?
Okay.
Second of all, it's like a train in that it's cars, right? But there's different segments of the caterpillar. And each segment, and of course I'm holding up a green one, it does something. This one has a little symbol on it that shows that it's sound, right? And this one has a turn on it. So I love the fact that fine motor, a child is putting this together. They have to push, they have to pull, right? These are all motions that OT is going to work on them later that build towards being able to write. So push and pull, putting together, and then he's really loud. I am going to say that, and then he's going to take off running. There he goes. And so you push the little start button here, and first he's going to light up and show you all of the things that he's going to do. He's doing it right now. He's showing us, and I don't know if you guys can see that he's lit up, and now he's going to take off and he'll do each one of them. Although I don't know if he likes the glass. And if he doesn't like the surface, he may be pausing to do that here. Here he goes. Can you see?
Yes,
lit
I
up?
can see. Yeah.
I wonder if they can from the lights. But he may not go because of the glass. No, there he goes.
Coming. Okay, great.
So now he goes straight, and then he's going to turn. And if he meets an obstacle, he will stop, and then the child can readjust, take apart, and have him go again. But this is teaching coding, you guys, to 3-year-olds. What this does is it shows them cause and effect. That if it says this, and it's teaching sequencing, because if it says it does this and it's going to come after this, then the child gets to critical thinking eventually of, well, I want it to go over there, but first I want it to go here. And so they learn to segment it together. It's a train, but it's a caterpillar. It's a coding toy. It's working on so many different skills. So this is part of the Think and Learn sequence from Fisher-Price.
Right.
They are the most clever toys, but this is my favorite one. And you can see it comes beautifully packaged, and we took this one out of the package. Fisher-Price, you remember how we used to have to cut things out on Christmas morning?
Oh.
They've made it so much easier. They've got these
that
little
alone
turn
is worth
things.
buying the toy.
Ooh, I'm telling you. But this is a great toy. It's from 3 to 6. It's preschool. It's our top toy. We want to thank Fisher-Price for participating in our Sensitive Santa. Oh, he's like, why are you taking me backwards? But in any case, you can buy other segments, you guys, to be able to do other things. So this is a toy that can grow with the child. And that's why it's think and learn.
Yeah.
I absolutely love this. I think Fisher-Price is onto something really incredible with these toys. So remarkable toy. If you have a child that's in that 3 to 6 range, I highly, highly recommend this toy. Don't you wish that our kids had been able to have, because I would have had this, I would have been all over this.
I would have had this too.
And how much, Wyatt, who loves trains,
Right.
how much would he have loved this?
Yeah, he would have loved it.
And really, honestly, people go, well, is it really teaching coding? Yes. The next phase up from this is Scratch. So once your child can do this, Scratch will make total sense to them.
Okay.
And then you go from Scratch to another, like to Python. I'm telling you, this is it. This is where it's at, the
Okay.
future of everything. And they put it together in thousands of different ways. Oh, yeah, I just set him off again. I like how he burps, sort of. And when you get to the one that makes noise, he stops and he does a little noise, and it's fabulous toy. Okay, so this is the Code a Pillar. It's from Fisher-Price. Think and Learn, and it is fantabulous. Love this toy. We're going to take a break, and then we're going to come back with our In the News. Lots of stories for you, including a new number for prevalence. Stick with us.
What is autism? What is autism?
What is autism?
What is autism?
What is autism?
What is autism?
I've been asking myself that for a very, very long time.
Let me think about that one.
Trying to,
Jeez. Let me think. Oh man, that's a big one. Yes.
Autism,
Autism is a neurological disorder that affects many of our kids in different ways.
It's a learning disability that affects the cognitive functions of the brain.
A lot of people have the misconception that it's a disability, and it's really not.
I look at it as like a special gift.
When one person thinks differently from another.
It's an opportunity for everyone to learn to understand someone that's a little different than them. Autism is the ability to educate.
They're given so much talent in different areas.
To me, autism means a chance to be with and be around people you really care about. Autism is beautiful.
It's a way of seeing the world differently.
It's always unique, totally intelligent, and sometimes mysterious.
Happiness that comes out of my son's hard work.
It's a movement.
Unpredictable.
That's right.
Awesome. Love.
The field I want to work in.
Laughter, fun, joy. Autism is beautiful to me.
I want you to remember these 3 words. There is hope.
A lot of adults don't really believe kids. They'll think, kids are kids, what are they talking about? But when a child stands up for what they believe in, it's so strong and powerful. I first got involved with autism advocacy 4 years ago when my friend was diagnosed. When I found out about my friend's diagnosis, I didn't really understand what it meant. But it didn't matter to me or change our friendship. I didn't look at her any differently. We still had so much fun together. Now I know that she experiences life a little differently than me, and that's okay. Knowing what she goes through has helped me to understand and be more caring towards other people in similar situations. I got involved with ACT Today because I wanted to do whatever I could to help. They provide options like behavioral therapy, medical care, social skills programs, assistance to military families, and much more. Being there for my friend was my #1 priority. I've been volunteering and spreading the word about the cause via my social media platform because raising awareness is a crucial first step. There needs to be more kids and teens involved to make sure that our voices are heard just as loudly as the adults. You may be small like me, but your acts of kindness are not.
Welcome back. Yes. We're going to shift to In the News now. We usually do that at the top of the show, but Vince had a meeting, so we switched things around. And otherwise, this would have been the top of the show.
Yes.
That there is a new report out suggesting that the incidence of autism in the United States is 1 in 36.
This is the National Health Center for Health Statistics, the NCHS, which released this new report. It is not from the CDC. just to make sure that everybody knows that.
Because it's always a thing where we're having to compare apples to apples and oranges to oranges. I kind of hate it when they change around the criteria a little bit, because sometimes they do that even when you're comparing apples to apples. But for people, this is mystifying to me that this came out on Friday,
right?
And that I looked for it
right.
in the news to find the thing to send to everybody to say I want to cover this, and it's nowhereville.
It was kind of hidden. This is in Dr. Bob Sears' blog on TACA.
Yes, the TACA Now blog. It's tacanow.org if you but tacanowblog.com if you want to go that way.
Right. And Dr. Sears says that's 1 in 14 kids. 1 in 14. This report is hard to digest. My heart is in my throat. The rapid incident increase of prevalence of autism and developmental disability should stop any human in their tracks, which we agree.
Absolutely, we agree. I do want to point out, though, for the naysayers who are like, well, it's not the CDC. Remember, we're comparing apples to apples. So this is one where they're doing a survey of parents. So in 2014, the survey demonstrated that the rate of autism was 1 in 45, which is 24% of the U.S. population. In 2015, it rose to 1 in 43. And now we are at 1 in 36.
Right.
So that's just comparing this study with this study with this study.
So clearly numbers to be alarmed about.
Yeah, that's 2.76%. We're encroaching upon 3% of the population.
Yeah, and with each CDC report, we wait 4 years until the information is made available, by the way. That's important to note, too, that the CDC numbers are going to be
always outdated. By the time we get the CDC numbers, it's always outdated. And I am sick and tired. I'm going to say this succinctly. I am sick and tired of people not listening to parents. Yes, this is a parent survey, but I'm sick and tired of you not listening to us. We are a group of people. We are not crazy. We have doctors backing us up saying that our kids have autism, you don't get to just say, oh, well, don't listen to them because they're parents.
Right. Not to be dismissed.
That's right. Okay.
So
check it out, tacanow.org, or you can go tacanowblog.com. It's in both places.
Also, there was a study about anxiety, which may heighten social communication challenges in autism, and this is what we were talking with Vince about a little bit. And this is that chicken or the egg age-old question.
Which one comes first?
Anxiety. This study says anxiety exacerbates social communications in children with autism, not the other way around. So it's not that social communications in children with autism cause anxiety. Anxiety comes first.
Yeah, and when you think about it, there's a certain amount of sense that it makes that if you're having anxiety, then you don't rush to go make a connection with someone.
Right.
And so you don't make that connection, so you've missed a little bit of what you needed to learn about how to make that connection. So by the time the kids are 6, 7, 8, they're so far behind socially, and now they've got anxiety that's such a problem. They're really recommending that you get your child treated as soon as you start to notice the anxiety. They really recommend a cognitive behavioral approach. I was saying earlier that that's how my anxiety was treated, and it works with kids. I have to say, if you're looking for a good book, Dr. Jed Baker has a book on treating anxiety in children, and it's for all children, but there's a specific chapter just about treating anxiety in children with autism, and it's the best book.
Dr. Ned Baker?
Dr. Jed Baker, who's been on the show a couple of times, and I adore him. He's the real deal. He also wrote the book No More Tantrums. So get Dr. Baker's book. I always wax poetic about it because I think it's so great. Because he not only covers everything in the book, but he says right in the beginning of the book, by the way, I'm not reinventing a wheel. This exists, but what I'm going to do is tell you the most important piece, which is that you have to get buy-in from the kid, because the kid only knows their experience. So they only know anxiety, and they think that's how this works.
Right.
And so you have to be able to convince them to want to work on it. And he helps you with that. And I think that's what's pivotal in his book.
Okay, great.
Okay, so moving on, we also wanted to say to you that there's a new study out that suggests that looking at just the genetics of autism, that it may be that the roots of this are in the cells. They're calling it a disease in this, which is troublesome for us, right? We don't like calling it a disease. But they were able to take skin samples and just look at the reaction that the skin samples had, and fascinating how the science works for that. But they're seeing basically, you know, we always worry about is the nature versus nurture.
Right.
How much of this is front loaded in the genetics? How much of it is environment? And we keep coming back to the fact that it's both of them, but everybody argues back and forth, but it's more this, but it's more that. But this was just looking at the skin cells and not looking at all the other things that, behavioral things that they're exposed to, and says, we think that there are some roots here genetically.
Suggested abnormalities in the electrical firing of neurons may lead to behavioral and developmental
And you're
symptoms.
brave. I was not going to go into all that.
Okay, well, that's the only thing I'm going to say. That the electrical firing of the neurons may lead to behavioral and developmental symptoms in autism.
So there you go. So you can check that out as well. We have to give a big shout out. You know, it's the time for Christmas miracles, and there have been several that have happened for autism care and treatment today in the last couple of weeks.
There have. We've got a lot of people donating and doing fundraisers.
And
there's
can
a fundraiser
I say,
going on.
It's all amazing. There's never enough, right? So if you feel like, well, I didn't do it, then don't feel like you know, oh, they've got enough. No, because there are more grants.
You can go to ACT today and you can make a donation. This is the time of year to do it. We have so many families.
And yet there are some people that are mentioning it up and stepping up and doing some incredible things. I want to give a shout out to a high school friend of mine, Spencer Malee, changed his name. Spencer Malee, who donated $1,000.
And I got a $1,000 donation to my personal page from my friend Nancy Glass.
And you just gotta, you know, these people.
I know, it's amazing.
What an amazing thing to be able to do. But so there are different card offices around the country that are doing fundraisers. They've adopted a grant that they're trying to fundraise for. And to our Card Manassas office, I'm just gobsmacked by this. I love this story so much. I even spoke to somebody at this restaurant. It's McKiernan's Lawton Street Tavern, and they're in New Rochelle. You know,
New Rochelle, New York.
New Rochelle, New York. You know what New Rochelle was famous for, right? From the Dick Van Dyke Show. That's where Rob and Laura Petrie lived.
Oh, really? Okay.
New Rochelle, New York, of course. It's in the suburbs,
I
just
didn't know
north
that.
of New York City. Oh, I'm a big Dick Van Dyke fan.
Right.
But anyway, so this McKiernan's Lawton Street Tavern, the card office said to them, hey, can we do a fundraiser here? It's happening on Friday, this Friday at 6:30 p.m. In New Rochelle. And this restaurant said, well, of course you can. We do all kinds of charity things, and that's great. And, you know, we'll make a banner. And they made this amazing banner. You can see it up there on the screen. And then they were saying, now, what exactly is this for? And they're raising money for a computer. For a 5-year-old who has a family member who is in the armed services.
Right.
And when the owner of McKiernan's found out, he started to worry about, well, I hope we raise enough money. I mean, let's do this right, but I hope we raise enough money. And he worried about it to the point where he went and bought the computer.
So.
Now, they're raising the money to offset it.
Right.
We want to be clear about that. But I love the spirit of somebody who says, well, I just can't bear, take a look at these wonderful people. I just can't bear, you know, like, let's make sure. Let's go get the computer.
Sure that it's going to happen.
It's like that thing that I love that I used to have on my wall, that when you're going after Moby Dick, make sure you pack the tartar sauce. So he's like, I'm buying the computer, so this is happening one way or the other. But you can help by going
McKiernan's Lawton Street Tavern in New Rochelle, New York.
And all of our love to them. What an amazing place. I've heard that the food is amazing at this place. So go there this Friday, go every Friday, because these are the kinds of people that we need to hold dear
support
and love, because they're people. I got Goosey's. Love McKiernan's. You're absolutely fabulous.
And we're almost out of time, but we've got another great story about that went viral.
Yes.
The 9-year-old boy.
This
George
video made
it's a
my
Greek
morning.
name, Yanolis.
This video made my morning. In fact, I really want Viri to reach out and see if we can get Dad and Son to be on. So here he is, 4th grade, 9-year-old boy, and he was asked to give a speech about his autism to his class. And so he made a video.
Which Dad helped edit.
Oh my gosh, it's so good, you guys. You've got to go online. Just put 9-year-old autism and it'll come up.
And
Funny that you can put 1 in 34 autism and that won't come up. But put 9-year-old with autism, film, and it will absolutely come up because everybody's watching it.
And he tries to explain why he does some of the things he does. But
And I'll tell you what,
at the
it's
end,
pretty
he says,
good.
"I'm a kid just like you."
And this explanation, pretty darn good. I think it's like everybody should get it, forward it to your families that you're going to spend the holidays with that aren't very sensitive. Forward it off to them so that they can see, and it's straight from the horse's mouth. He's telling his own story. And
He loves music, dancing, Harry Potter, Minecraft, and tacos.
And he's quite the little break dancer.
Okay.
He's got some moves, and Dad's quite the good editor. I'd love to have them on the show. But check it out, you guys. It's a wonderful thing, and send it to people who don't know what autism is or ask you who better.
No.
Oh my gosh!
Yes, we
and
have
we
have a very
absolutely
important
have
thing.
to do in memory. Have you got his picture there? And
We've got a young
name, and I want to
boy
make sure I
named
get it right.
Brandon,
Okay.
who unfortunately passed away, and the family wanted donations to go to Act Today, this is just incredible that in their grief they thought of this.
I can't even imagine this young man who just such a light. And for the parents to have it that together, they said, in this time and this holiday, so there is a GoFundMe page that you guys can go find, and it's for Autism Care and Treatment Today.
There you go. There's his picture and his name, Brandon Sean Luong.
And they're hoping to help as many families in the state of Arizona that had put in grants as they possibly can.
So
I know
selfless of them.
I know that over $5,000 was raised in the first few days, and so we encourage, if you have a little extra money, what a wonderful thing to do for a family who is facing the worst at this time of year.
So please make a donation in memory of Brandon.
What a special little light and making a difference even after all of this.
Yes.
My heart goes out.
I know.
We're so grateful for everybody for being here today. Remember that we're going to be live tomorrow. I've got some great guests on the show tomorrow, some more toys that we're going to show. It's our yearly interview with Brian Turtle from Endless Games, and we've got a great new set of blocks from Infantino that we're going to be showcasing with an individual from Infantino, so that's going to be great, and some more toys that we're going to be doing, and Bonnie Yates will be back tomorrow as well. All of that's happening then, but until then, give your kiddos a hug from me.
And yourselves a hug from me. Bye-bye for now.
Bye-bye for now.